Hello everyone and welcome to another video. My name is Vladimir. In this video I would like to talk about what the most difficult language that I have ever studied was. Now, needless to say, this is just based on my personal experience and my personal opinion. The answer to the question, what is the most difficult language or what is the most difficult language to study, will depend and vary from person to person. So for me personally, the most difficult language that I have ever studied was hands down Mandarin Chinese. And I will try to tell you why it was so. So a little bit about my background. I'm a European person. I have the native languages that I have are Slovak and Czech and Hungarian to a certain extent, which is not an Indo-European language, but it is very far from Chinese too. And before I started learning Chinese, I have learned quite a few languages, not like 30 or anything like that, but let's say maybe 10, and several of them I spoke already at a pretty good level. I thought at least that was the case. And so when I got to Mandarin, I was very confident, and I thought that, yeah, it's just another language, language as any other language. Little kids in China learn it to speak to a native level. It is possible. There's no reason why I couldn't do it too. And I think this was one of the first and biggest mistakes that I had, that I was overly confident when I started learning Mandarin, because I thought that it's just possible. It is possible to learn it in the exact same way as I've been learning all the other foreign languages, but the foreign language that I have learned up to that point. But the thing is that it was only after I have learned Mandarin that I actually realize what it is to study a foreign language, because all the other languages that I have studied, except for Hungarian, of course, literally are just dialects of the same Indo-European language, if I can call it that. Mandarin is something completely different. And of course, there might be people saying, okay, try Greenlandic, try, I don't know, try Navajo, or try a language completely unrelated to European languages. I'm sure it's true. I'm just telling you what I think about Mandarin and the languages that I have been learning. And the reason why I thought and why I think that Mandarin was really for the first real foreign language that I have learned was that learning other languages like Italian or German or French, or I don't know, even Russian. Well, Russian for me is easy because my native language is Slovak. Learning these languages, you literally only learn that what is different with your native language. But there's a huge deal which is the same. Not to mention culture, which is, we share the same culture as well. So there's so many things that that help you out when you're learning the languages from your own language family. And I'm European, so I'm talking about European language families that you just don't have in Chinese. So when I started out with Chinese, I think the most difficult thing that I think that now and during the process and in the beginning was that with Chinese, it is very, very, and I'm talking about Mandarin Chinese, very difficult to start, to get off the ground and just start speaking the language, so that you can learn by practice and by talking and just communicating and listening and all that. So out of context and just by practice and everyday talk. With Chinese, this has taken me at least a year and a half to get to a level where I was really able to talk about whatever I wanted to, of course using maybe not very correct constructions, but still talk about almost anything that I wanted to talk about and learn from context and by practicing, by talking to my friends. With Italian, with other languages, with French, with Russian, I could do this basically after a few weeks, after a few months of studies. But with Mandarin, it's just very hard. So just to give you a little background about myself and about my Mandarin learning journey, I have a bachelor's degree in Chinese studies. So that means that I have spent nights and days trying to figure out Confucius texts and learning classical Chinese and reading Chinese literature and poetry, apart from studying the language as well. I have been learning Chinese for 8 years, and I currently work as an interpreter of Chinese, Slovak, and English, mostly English and Slovak, but also Mandarin Chinese. So I think I have a C2 level in Chinese. People sometimes tell me I do sound like a native speaker, but I don't think that's true. There are some. I still do have a I still do have a lot of room for improvement. So that's just to assess my current level, and now why I think Mandarin is difficult. So as I said, number one reason is very difficult to get off the ground with Mandarin. There are so many obstacles that will keep pushing you down and pushing you down. Pronunciation, tones, and especially how they are explained to us Westerners and how we learn them. Absolutely no cognates. I mean, you can't tell me that cafe and shafa and shala are going to save you when you're learning Mandarin. These are like 3 words, and they're in total maybe 20 that are going to be frequently used. So there are absolutely no cognates. That means words that you can recognize in Mandarin that you can just basically get for free. No false friends. Nothing. Well, I'm not sure if there are absolutely no false friends, but close to 0. The syntax, word order, the culture, which is so different, just so many things. And I didn't even get to Chinese characters, of course, which I think it's a completely different story because we're talking about spoken Chinese. So many things that make this language so incredibly difficult. Another reason is Mandarin sounds, I mean, Mandarin words and Mandarin sentences are very, very short. So what happens is when people say something in Mandarin, it will be at least 1/3 shorter than the same sentence in, let's say, in English or any Western language. So the information flows much faster into your brain. So if you want to learn how to understand the language, which is something that I've been doing quite often before I went to any country, I would first learn how to understand by listening, and then I would go to the country, and then I would only concentrate on speaking. With Mandarin, this was incredibly hard because you would listen to the same sentence over and over and over, and you still wouldn't get it because it wasn't that it was fast. They were speaking at normal pace. It was just that the amount of information was concentrated on a much smaller block of sounds because, as I said, the words are shorter and the sentences are shorter. Very hard to learn how to understand this language. Mandarin sounds are very similar to each other. So if you have ji, qi, xi, these 3 sounds sound very similar to us Westerners. They mean 3 completely different things. And I'm only talking about the initial consonants now, but there are finals which are nasal or not nasal, so right? And I didn't even get to the tones yet, which I think is a whole different world. And I think the main reason why tones are difficult is how we learn them. They shouldn't be called tones. They should be called melodies because it's very confusing when they're called tones, and maybe I will make a separate video about why I think that is so. What else is difficult about Mandarin? Yeah, well, speaking. I mean, many times, and I was learning Mandarin for years already, I would say something with very good pronunciation. Well, I thought it was very good pronunciation. Good, wording, correct word choice and everything, and people still would give me stares and they would say, I don't really understand what you want to say. And it's very frustrating. I mean, can you imagine learning Italian for 2 years and not being able to get your point across? Like, it's not even about not being able to understand nuances or like exactly understand what you were trying to say. It's literally people not knowing what you're saying. And it's very frustrating, very demotivating. And all in all, just takes incredible effort to maintain motivation in the long run. So these were the bits and pieces of the reasons why I think Mandarin is the most difficult language that I have studied, and I probably will make a video and compare it to studying Japanese. I think Mandarin is much harder than Japanese, and I know that there will be a lot of people who have studied Mandarin and Japanese who will tell me, no, Japanese is much harder, and they will tell me that Mandarin is so simple, it has no grammar. I will try to make a video where I will try to stand my ground and try to tell you why I think Mandarin is much, much harder than Japanese. One last thing that I wanted to say, I mentioned characters and I didn't really talk about them. A lot of people say that Chinese is easy when it comes to speaking, but the characters are difficult. Some people say, yeah, Chinese wouldn't be as difficult if it weren't for characters, but I think Chinese characters are not what makes Chinese difficult. The only problem with Chinese characters is that there's a lot of them. So the only thing you need is time. And that's it. You just sit down and you study. So I guess a lot of you watching right now are university students or have some sort of a degree. if there is anyone who passed any sort of a university exam, you know how much information you can cram into your head, even in one day, in one night, if you like. So really, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 Chinese characters, yes, it's a large number, but when it boils down to it, all it takes is time. You don't need any special talents. You don't, that's it. What is difficult is what I mentioned earlier: pronunciation, word order, understand the culture, the absolute lack of cognates, and so many things that make Chinese hard and then push you to the ground so many times that you lose motivation, and it's basically very, very difficult to continue. So there you have it. Those were my reasons. I hope you liked the video. If you like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye bye.